This afternoon, we are focusing on Africa capital markets and, of course, in terms of mobilizing finances for capital projects within the continent, with the continent looking at Vision 2063. And recently, given that our president has spoken about Vision 2060, and recently you have witnessed what happened in Tanzania as well, with President Samia Suluhu talking about Vision 2050. How can that be inculcated into some of the vision not only the continent is looking at, but the country in terms of African projects attracting global finances to improve the livelihoods and economically grow the country and the region at large? Joining us this afternoon is none other than Dr. Emmanuel Nzai, the chairman of the Organizing Committee of Africa Capital Week 2026. Daktari, welcome. And maybe Daktari, tuweze kwanza, we start off by talking to us about what Africa Capital Week 2026 means, not only for Kenya, but the continent at large.
Thank you so much. So Africa Capital Week will be held on September 7th to the 11th in Nairobi. The idea of the Capital Week actually has been on the build-up for the whole of last year. The Vision 2030 took the implementing agencies to the UN General Assembly last year. And the conversation there was about the new global financial architecture, and especially the like of Kenya, who we have now moved to a lower middle income country, how we become self-sufficient in terms of what we're now calling the economic sovereignty. Vision 2030, of course, has all the Vision 2030 projects. We have our MTP now, medium-term plan, which we need to raise money, either from the taxes or also then from the private sector. The public-private partnerships by themselves are not enough. What we are seeing a trend right now, and I think we'll be building this, the regulatory framework with the Capital Market Authority, is the deepening of capital markets where we can raise funds to fund some of our projects through the capital markets. And this is the trend. So we got that conversation from the interactions we had with Wall Street, much of the global financial leaders in this space. And we said what we need to do then for Kenya, for the Kenya Vision 2030, is to convene all the capital markets stakeholders in Africa, not only in Kenya, but across Africa. Kenya is one of the top of our Nairobi Securities Exchange. The Capital Markets Authority has been a very good regulator to advance new instruments and new products into the market. To the extent now we have seen the results. The Kenya Pipeline went to list after 18 years. Family Bank went to list. There has been other stronger companies, especially government-owned enterprises, the like of Kengen, has been in the market for a while. So through that, we are at a place where we can scale. And in that instance, then, we help solve one of our biggest challenges we've had with the Vision 2030, which is funding these major infrastructure projects, high growth sectors that we have, from agriculture, from health security space, across the board. So that's really the essence of Africa Capital Week, that we get to have this conversation, but more have a deepening of capital markets and economic sovereignty conversation.
And earlier on, Daktari, we were speaking and you told me about how some of the challenges we are facing. But in terms of 2030 and now talking about Vision 2060, how do you ensure that financial development, that is the key conversation countries are having, including one of us, how can we attract global funding to fund such key projects to move the country forward?
Fantastic. Actually, the biggest form of funding is credibility. And in our story for Kenya now, we're talking about the Vision 2030. This that one of the #1 things that the Vision 2030 has done as a long-term national policy for economic transformation. Launched in 2008 with its flagship projects, which have government participation and clarity on also private participation in terms of them participating in the PPP framework, which we have done that quite a bit. So you talk about the LAPSET project. The LAPSET is not just government. There's a special economic zone in it which needs to attract. And the good news about it, to show evidence, the Dangote oil refinery would not have been coming to Lamu to set shop if we did not have the LabSet launch in 2008 as a flagship project and the enabling infrastructure and environment on it. So what has happened with the Kenya Vision 2030 then, it's been an instrument or a platform of credibility, because now you can be predictable as a country what the government thinks, where they are going, and it has evidence, very tangible. Look at Konza Technopolis, one of the best flagship projects that Kenya Vision 2030 has had, the Silicon Savannah, which was built out of the ingenuity of the Kenyan people in the creation of M-Pesa and that whole technology front end that we've had. So we've been able now through that to leverage it, and now I think we are for sure the leading country in Africa and competitive in the world as far as technology and human capital is concerned. So through that, that has been the platform for us to kind of give credibility to the world, to the investors, private sector, that there is some predictability. The policy is aligned. There is an enabling environment in terms of policy framework, and also government where it invests for it to do the de-risking into the private sector, both domestic and international, to come invest in Kenya.
And one of the major challenges you can tell us about the continent, which even global partners across the world have been speaking about, money laundering has been a bigger issue in this continent, or not only in this continent but other continents, but it has been rife in this particular continent, even grey listing of some nations. So how do you deal with that when you mobilize resources for such projects? So
I think one, and this is I think the best thing that probably we have in our institutions. If you look at it very carefully, we have been very, very progressive, and the cabinet secretary body has probably for the first time more than any time been out there really talking about the Kenya's economic architecture and the financial architecture. Fiscal and monetary policies run by both the central government and the Treasury. The Capital Markets Authority itself, I think it really deserves a lot of credibility in this. They have been running the deepening of capital markets, securitization, very consistently. And through that, if you look at it carefully, all the way to what we have now of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Infrastructure Fund, the listing of the Kenya Pipeline, listing of Family Bank, that is a movement which basically has been set up for the capital market to be trustworthy. Okay, a significant one, which I think quickly passes, is now we have a State Department for public finance and assets created in Treasury. That solidifies it, because the whole of now the Privatization Act, which is in place, we have the PPP Directorate, we have the Privatization Authority. So the policy and institutional framework, I think, has now moved to a place where we can manage better than many other countries competitively. And I think we have been doing this very deliberate, very intentional, both in policy, regulatory, and also the government goodwill at any given time.
Maybe in your final remarks, given that we've run out of time, Daktari, talk to us about how we can bridge the gap between investors and bankable projects within our country and the continent in just 30 seconds.
How we bridge is simply probably what we are doing. We have institutions like the Kenya Development Corporation, which is created to de-risk, created for it to also help in project preparation. There's the Nairobi Securities Exchange, which has an Ibuka program, which is help in terms of acceleration. And they also have a Center of Excellence, which is created for platforms like that. So through that, it's all about the packaging of the project preparation for it to be bankable, a good balance sheet where it can stand the test of time by any investor, that they will put in their money and they will get profits.
Thank you so much, Daktari. That is Dr. Emmanuel Nzai, the chairman of the Organizing Committee of the Africa Capital Week 2026. He has just informed us that that particular conference will be taking place between the 7th to 11th of September 2026. We'll be keeping an eye on those developments and how they'll be interlinked with some of the conversations that are currently happening in the country in terms of Beyond Vision 2030 and how complementary it will be, not only in this country, but the continent at large.